Welcome to Move the Sticks. I am Bucky Brooks. I'm here with Lance Zierlein, and we are going to talk about all things that happened on day 2 of the NFL draft. Second and third round in the books. 100 picks are put away, and we are on the, I guess we're kind of on the back nine going into tomorrow. But initially, just your thoughts, because it is funny, Lance, because we do all this prep going into it. We have kind of these themes that we're thinking about going into the event. And now we're here. What are some of the things that stand out to you right away?
Well, I think the first night we saw the run on tackles, and then we had tackles that didn't go. But I think it still has to do with watching the rushers come off the board and watching every year this happens. And I it shouldn't be something new, but every year it's amazing how the smallest one pick can trigger an avalanche of a run at a position. Like, it doesn't take much for all the general managers to be very antsy, and all of a sudden, one center goes or one tight end goes, and then 2 tight ends go in, and bang, 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 trade, and everyone's trying to get up, and it's a mad dash for position. So that's just a mechanism of the draft that always fascinates me about which teams are going to be patient and which teams are saying, we got to have this player. We're going to hold back until there's a run. And when there's a run, we better have a trade partner ready to roll.
Yeah, no, it's funny because everyone is looking for that run. And we had a few different runs. I mean, we had to run with the tight ends. We had to run with the tackles. We had to run with some of the DBs and those things. Oh, how can we forget the wide receivers? And it all kind of just is the domino effect as you talk about it. The thing that I look at when I'm looking back at the board and looking at some of the guys that have gone is, okay, the second round, you kind of know, all right, man, here are the good dudes. You had an opportunity to reset. Let's make sure some of the notable names go early. And we saw that happen in this draft. We talk about Deshaun Zierlein being the first one off the board.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that. But that's just what's your flavor of ice cream, right? I thought Denzel Boston, but Zierlein has really good tape too. It's just a matter of what kind of deep threat do you want.
Yeah, so he comes off the board. And then you see, initially, Chase Posadas, a guard goes, an edge defender, but then Cade McDonald, to me, is when we kind of start setting off the run stoppers going. Cade McDonald goes to your Houston Texans. A few picks later, you end up seeing Lee Hunter and some of those other guys. Christian Miller go, 42 for Christian Miller, 49 for Hunter. What are your thoughts on the big bodies going?
Yeah, the Texans needed that, and they got who they needed. I think so it's not a deep draft at defensive tackle. So what we saw was they got pushed up the board. Albert Regis, I wasn't sure. I thought he was borderline 3rd, 4th. Albert Regis from A&M goes and joins Tyler Onyedem, the other defensive tackle from Texas A&M, who went. You talked about Christian Miller, went in the second round where I thought he would go. So now these defensive tackles, I think it's going to slow down to get a defensive tackle. This is not, teams will tell you, it's not a very good defensive tackle draft. Now, I happen to think there are some guys who can play. I like Albert Regis. I like Onyedem. I like all the guys that got drafted from the defensive tackle spot. Dom Orange. So I'm not as down on defensive tackle as some of the others were, but I think now you're going to, the depth of defensive tackle isn't great this year. So this is where we're actually going to start seeing running backs come off the board here in the 4th and 5th round. It's going to be heavy running backs 4th and 5th round, and these are backup type of backs. I don't think we're going to see a lot of starters. It's a soft year for running backs. Mike Washington still on the board from Arkansas. Height, weight, speed, intriguing player. I was surprised Kalen Black went ahead of him. Also surprised Kalen Black didn't get that combine invite, but his teammate Roman Hemby did.
Yeah, it was
interesting, yeah.
And particularly because Indiana won right there too, national champions. Normally you get like a little favor when it comes to that. But I mean, we talk about these running backs, and I'll say it. After Price went, I expected Emmett Johnson and Mike Washington to both go off the board today. I am surprised that they didn't go off in the 3rd round, but it makes for a very interesting 4th round where you're gonna have a bunch of running backs that will come off the board. And guys kind of had to figure out how they fit, but we talked about it. Outside of Jeremiah Love, there wasn't the one guy that you could count on being the bell cow. And the running backs being more specialists than workhorses, it makes it kind of tricky to value those guys as day 1 or day 2 consideration.
Well, you see why Seattle kind of had to sit tight and draft Jadarian Price, because it's just they're just not in this draft. I mean, So Seattle really needed a running back, and they didn't attack free agency for a starting caliber running back. So what they had to do was sit tight at 32 and draft Price. Now, I like Jadarian Price, but they were also in a position where they kind of needed to do that. I'm looking right now, Bucky, I want to talk about what some of these teams did, because I think there's some interesting philosophies developing right now. When you look at the Jets, Darren Mugie and Aaron Glenn, Darren Mugie, the general manager, Aaron Glenn, the head coach, obviously. You look at the 4 players they drafted: David Bailey, Texas Tech; Kenyon Sadiq, Oregon; Omar Cooper, Indiana; D'Angelo Pons, Indiana. All 4 teams college football playoff teams.
Yeah.
These are all guys who have performed at a high level as well and have a little history, even though it's a little shorter history for Bailey and Pons and Omar Cooper and Kenyon Sadiq. But they have a winning history. Bailey was a transfer in from Stanford. Pons came over from James Madison. I like the fact that they're getting guys that they consider to be winners. They consider these guys to be winners. I like what the Jets did with their pick. I think their picks. I think they made the most of their 4 picks in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah. So the big thing to me when I look at the Jets and you talk about those guys coming from winners, I don't think that is random. I think that's by design. The Jets had a tough time in their locker room last year. Some of the old players and young players didn't get along. They weren't buying into the plan that Aaron Glenn had laid out. So they made a concerted effort to bring in veterans. They brought in DeMario Davis. They brought in Geno Smith. Acquired Minka Fitzpatrick in a trade to try and change the energy in the locker room, shipped out a bunch of different players. And then in the draft, they had an opportunity to pick, hey, who are the guys that can drive the changing culture? So then you see these guys, 4 guys that came from college football playoff teams, winning pedigrees, understand the high standards and expectations that go with being a winner. This is the Jets intentionally populating their locker room with the right kind of guys so they can turn this around. And it doesn't mean it's going to be an easy turnaround, but it does mean that these guys understand when you demand a lot from them in anticipation of winning, they know that they've seen it work, and that's why it's a big deal. You talked about the Jets. I'm going to talk about something. Carson Beck and Drew Allar. 2 quarterbacks come off the board, day 2. Both of these guys come off in round 3, like you had talked about, that the quarterback sweet spot's round 1, round 3. We're not going in 2.
Don't do it much.
So Carson Beck, first pick of the 3rd round, he comes off the board. A few picks later, Drew Allar goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Your initial thoughts on those 2 guys being selected as the next to go after Ty Simpson and Fernando Mendoza?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, there had been some Garrett Nussmeier talking. For me, Garrett Nussmeier just didn't have the traits, doesn't have the size. If we're going to look for a pocket passer, we might as well get guys who are bigger. Carson Beck is a bigger player. Drew Allar has awesome physical traits when it comes to what you want out of a pocket passer. It's just such a strange year because just to kind of, not to relitigate this necessarily, but to rehatch it, I guess, Drew Allar was supposed to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks headed into the year. Carson Beck was a guy that was hot 2 years ago, and the question was, can he rehabilitate his quarterback stock? Garrett Nussmeier, one of the hotter names coming into the draft this year, and he's still on the board. He'll be there. He'll go off in day 3, probably 4th round. But it's I can't help but feel a little bit of excitement's not the word, but I understand why the Arizona Cardinals are taking a shot with Carson Beck. I understand why the Pittsburgh Steelers take a shot with Drew Allar. Because, yes, they have needs at quarterback. I understand that. But these aren't just automatic backups. Now, I gave them both backup grades. But you just still say, man, if I could just get that, I've seen it on tape before. I've seen the flashes. Yeah. If I could just get that a little bit more out of him, and can we coach him up? Can we get Drew Allar to fix the mechanics? You're chasing the hopes that you're the one, that your coaches or your staff can get the most out of those 2 quarterbacks. Because if you get the most out of them, they both can be starters. If you get the most out of them. But I think Allar has the higher upside, but Carson Beck is much safer. Carson Beck can come in. I think Carson Beck's going to be a functional, I think he's going to be a pretty good backup in the NFL.
So the interesting thing about both of these guys, if you go back and you track their career, I'm looking at the numbers, 43 career starts for Carson Beck, 35 starts for Drew Allar. at various times throughout their collegiate career, Lance, these guys were talked about being QB1 in a draft class. And ultimately, they didn't go to that. But when you come back to it, as we're on the draft, everyone was talking about all these other guys that could go. I mean, we heard Garrett Nussmeier. We heard the guy from North Dakota State. Talked about Cole Payton and all that. At the end of the day, what won out? Traits.
Traits.
The traits won out.
Yeah.
These guys were talked about QB1s. These guys were 4- and 5-star recruits, respectively. At the end of the day, when the coaches and the scouts had a chance to pick who are the next ones, Carson Beck and Drew Allar went off the board because they looked the part as franchise quarterbacks.
I want to address something that you brought up. It's a study that I went and did, not much of one, just going and researching. But it's the 1 and 3. It's the 1 and 3 corollary. That is, if you historically you go look at it, most quarterbacks who get drafted who have a chance to start are going to go in round 1. A heavy percentage, very light in round 2, and then a much bigger percentage in round 3. Not as much as round 1. And so what it is teams are basically saying, well, if we think you're going to be a starter, even if we have a second round grade, we're pushing you to the first round because whether you go in the first or the second, we're getting fired if we don't develop you. It doesn't really matter. So we're just going to get you in the first and we'll go try to find something else to help in the second. What you don't see is teams take a quarterback in a second because by then the best quarterbacks are already off the board in round 1, and you've got good running backs, you've got good wide receivers, you got cornerback, safeties, guys who are going to be future starters in the second round. Why take a chance with a second-tier quarterback in the second round? So you wait until the third round. And if you think about it, Carson Beck and Drew Allar, this is a round where you draft good backups that you hope maybe have some pop. But it's not unusual to see, Davis Mills has been a good backup. He was drafted in the third round. This is where you go find backups is the third round.
And what I love about your point when you talk about, hey, we're not going to take these guys in the second round because the second round is reserved for guys that we know are going to start. They're key contributors. But now we get into the third round. Developmental potential. What do they have? They have height, weight, size, arm talent. They have experience, and they have an expertise where you think that you can develop them. And you're right. If they can't start, man, we took a shot on someone that was a backup player. Whatever that is, when you start looking at these names that are populating the third round on the draft board behind us, Lance, all these guys are not going to be stars. If I'm going to throw a dart at a quarterback, the third round appears to be a nice sweet spot because it doesn't wreck your salary cap situation. It doesn't wreck your draft board. We talked about the first and second round being the rounds that you have to hit on. These are the developmental players, and so why not take a chance on Carson Beck and Drew Allar, who were regarded as QB1s at certain points of their collegiate careers. What else you got?
I was going to say Howie Roseman. It's always fun watching him maneuver. He and Nick Caserio's turning into this too. Like Nick Caserio's up and down the draft board. He moved up for Keelan Rutledge. He moved up for Caden McDonald. I got to see. He probably moved up for their other picks as well. I've got to look at it because he does that quite a bit. But it is intriguing to see how many of these, the Cincinnati Bengals don't do a lot of phone calls and moving around, right? There's certain teams that don't have that reputation. We know Mickey Loomis is extremely aggressive, sometimes to a fault at giving picks away. It bit Minnesota. It definitely bit Atlanta in terms of trading up. But I think it's kind of fun to watch certain general managers work in terms of getting up and down the board and finding. And I can't imagine that it's very easy to. You got to have a feel for it. Howie Roseman's been doing this for a while. I think he has a feel for how to maximize his draft capital and then move back up for players he circled. Because clearly he has a cluster of players that he circles. He knows when he wants to get up there. There's a story out there that he jumped up ahead of. He knew that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to draft Mekhi Lemon, so he intentionally jumped up there ahead of him at 20. I mean, that can be the difference between just one player can make an enormous difference on a team. And so finding the guy that you really love is such an important thing. I think I'm not for giving away first-round picks, where you just trade future first-rounders and come up. That frequently bites you. But I do think if you have a board set, Bucky, if you got a board behind you, a set with guys that you want, why don't more general managers go out there, and maybe they do, and just say, let's go do whatever we have to to get 4 guys that we really, really love in this draft.
You wonder about that, right? Because there's some people that will say, like, hey, man, I'd rather populate it, just have a bunch of different guys and we're going to throw darts and do it. And they have like 1 million names on the board, 150 plus names, as opposed to keeping it skinny. Let's say the guys that we really like, that really fit what we do, and let's aggressively go after those guys. And if we can't get those guys, let's trade out and accumulate more assets.
Yeah.
But Howie Roseman has become one of the wheelers and dealers of the draft. That not only does he go after the guys that he likes, but he always finds a way to put that possible in his pocket. Meaning next year I'm always going to have an extra 1, an extra 2 that I can parlay into some other things. He's one of the best in the business at doing that, and we will see because, look, man, the rubber's going to hit the road soon when it comes to the A.J. Brown situation and what they're able to get back from that. But you can tell he came into this draft with a plan of not only making sure that wide receiver room was solid, but of upgrading the entire team because they made a trade.
Yeah.
I mean, they made a trade to Jonathan Grenard to add him, paid him. They keep people in the contract. It's just, look, man, a guy who wants to make sure that our team is always in the hunt as a title contender.
Eli Stowers, tight end. So we had the first tight end off the board was Kenyon Sadiq. We talked about a long time. Eli Stowers is a player who is a rare athlete. I mean, he jumped, and his agent told me before the draft process even started, he said, wait until you see how high his vertical leap is going to be. And he actually jumped way higher than I thought. But that's one of those guys with the Eagles. When we're talking about the Eagles, circle back to Stowers. You know, he went and got Mekhi Lemon. He traded up for Mekhi Lemon. He targeted an elite athlete in Eli Stowers. And he did that because he's going to replace, that's going to be Goddard's eventual replacement. So I like the fact that he's saying, let's swing for the safe, non-explosive athlete in Mekhi Lemon, who's just hyper competitive. Yeah. And then he kind of got the opposite, where sometimes I'd like to see more competitive nature out of Eli Stowers, but if you get him cranked up, his traits are like his speed and separation and ability to go vertical on you. That could really end up boding well for the Eagles because they took a chance on 2 completely different type of players. And usually, I get so locked in with seeing GMs who just get one type of player, even if it's different positions. We just love traits. We love college production. These guys are 2 totally different types of players that Howie went after, and he obviously coveted both, even though they're very different types. Yeah,
I think they're different types in terms of playing style. I think the common denominator is probably the level of competitiveness and dog that they both have. When you looked at not only Mekhi Lemon, because we talked about the dog that he brings to the field every time, but how about Eli Stowers going from being a quarterback to being a marquee tight end and following the guy that beat him out at quarterback to Vanderbilt and having a level of success. So you give him credit for that. The thing about Eli Stowers is he kicked off a run on tight ends that speaks volumes about the way that the league is changing. I mean, we just saw a bunch of wide tight ends and flex tight ends come off the board, and it is a reaction, in my estimation, to what the Rams were able to do successfully last year in running 13 personnel.
Oh, yeah.
1 back, 3 tight ends, 1 wide receiver, the different combinations and concepts they ran to utilize that to really dictate to the defense what they want you in. The league is a copycat league, and because this was a solid tight end class, but also because of the success of the multi-tight end sets that the Rams and others had, we saw a lot of tight ends go off the board in rounds 2 and 3.
One of them was Sam Roush, and you look over at to Chicago Bears. They got Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet, Sam Roush. Now, I'm just telling you now, this was built for 13. Colston, we know, is a combination tight end, but he's a problem as a pass catcher. Sam Roush is the best run blocking, in my estimation, the best run blocking wide tight end in this entire draft. And then you got Cole Kmet, who can do a little bit of both. So you're putting 3, and they're all big body guys. They're not small. Colston Loveland's a big guy who can get out in space. You really, if they go with 12 personnel, with Loveland and Roush, for example, they can beat you up in the running game, depending on how you match up with them. You go 13, you're going to have to go big personnel. And now you got Kmet and Loveland that can get out, out into space and do some damage. So, and Ben Johnson, if there's one head coach and play caller that I'm trusting to mismatch you and come up with something. Obviously, Sean McVay's one of them. But Ben Johnson's the other.
He can go toe-to-toe. He can get creative. He can do some funky things or whatever. And we talked about it last night about Caleb Williams. Didn't realize he had a sub 60% completion rate.
Yeah.
Well, the easiest way to change that, the shortest throw is right over the middle of the field. Let's get multiple tight ends that can find a way to get open and make big things happen. We can go to a break. When we come back, Lance, we can get your final thoughts on day 2 and what we're looking ahead to in day 3. All right, LZ, we got it now. This is the round where the players are made. The 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds. Day 3 is where you find those hidden gems and those things. Give me a handful of guys that you got your eye on.
Well, number one, I think I'm going to tell you guys that I think should come off the board that are good football players. Jalen Kilgore, who was a nickel corner at South Carolina. He's big. He's athletic. I was really surprised he didn't go off the board in day 2. Very surprised. I think he's got a chance to play more than just a nickel. I think he can play a split safety. Kyle Lewis, hyper athletic, undersized linebacker who is really a specialty player. He can cover Bucky as a linebacker. He's got great ball skills. He has the ability to cover not only running backs out of the backfield and F tight ends that are out in space, but also some occasional slot corners. If he wants to play underneath, he can match with them underneath. I'm waiting for him to go because I think he's one of those specialists that are going to be really good on sub package. I don't know what to do with Keontae Scott. I mean, he is a phenomenal run defender. They play him close to the line of scrimmage. I think the question that teams have is if he's a nickel, then is he going to be able to cover man-to-man vertically, even though he ran really fast? But you and I both know a 40 time is not the same, running straight is not the same as flipping your hips and accelerating quickly. He's another one I want to see come off the board. And then, there's a couple of really good wide receivers, or really, one of them's really good. One of them I think is more interesting. Skylar Bell, who killed it at East-West. You were at East-West, right?
He was at East-West.
Skylar Bell had a great East-West. He has really good tape, has too many drops. But I felt like Skylar Bell is an impactful. I talked to Steve Smith a little bit about him today as well. He likes him too. Yeah, he likes him too. He's going to be sitting on the board. I'm really intrigued by him. Bryce Lance, Trey Lance's brother, vertical wide receiver. He came out and I think he'll come off the board fairly quickly. But a couple names I want to keep in mind for you, specialists. Grayson Halton, pass rush. Everyone wants a pass rushing defensive tackle. Yeah. They don't really exist in this draft. Outside of Grayson Halton's one of them. He is undersized, but really a tough guy to block whenever it's time to rush the passer. You've got another one in Travis Burke, a 6'9" tackle who is the rare plus run blocker. You don't see that much where a tackle can bend and just drive guys and finish guys. He's got block finishes and pancakes like you saw out of Keelan Rutledge. And it's weird. You just don't see that out of a 6'9" tackle. So this whole draft it's had weird mismatched parts to it. And we're going to still see some of the specialists, a 6'9" run blocking tackle, things you don't usually see, we're going to see early in the 4th round tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You talk about that. I am fascinated by the quarterback discussion, Garrett Nussmeier. There's a lot of conversation, people talking about him working his way back into the conversation. So I'm curious about him. I want to see when and if Taylor Green goes. Which team takes him on, and what are the plans that they talk about with him, because he is dynamic as a dual threat playmaker. Running back position, which running backs go first, where they go, how does the league value them? Do they value them in the 4th round, or are we talking about guys that are 5th and 6th? Because if they're valued as 5th and 6th round prospects, it means the league was really down on this running back class. And it's going to be hard for some of those guys to get out of their hole to become frontline stars.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be hard for some of them to last more than a couple years. Because this is where special teams is going to play a big part. You're a 5th round running back in a weak running back draft. You better be good on teams.
Oh, you can't come in with any entitlement. You got to figure out. You got to get it out the mud. And there'll be some of those guys. And then ultimately, Lance, best player that is on the board, Jamar McCoy. And I know we talk about the ACL injury and those things, but man, how long will he be punished for the medical situation? That is a major.
Concern.
We're talking about someone who had top 10, top 15 talent who's still on the board.
Some people thought he was going to be the best corner in the draft, but we've gone through the first 3 rounds, and so they say the 4th round, all sins are forgiven. We're going to find out, because if Jermod McCoy doesn't come off the board in the first 5 to 6 picks in the 4th round, I really have some concerns. And I did have a league source, a team source, kind of tell me that he had a lot of this before day 2.
Yeah.
I said, do you think he comes off early in the second? He said, I don't think he goes in day 2. I said, really? I said, is that bad? He goes, for our doctors. Now every doctor's a little different, but the league didn't see him on day 2. So I really, for the kid, I'm really concerned. Because the talent's so good. I would just say, hey, we redshirt him this year. We get the surgery on his knee. We get it in the surgery.
Rebel came off, and he had like last year.
Yeah.
So it's it's one of those things that, unfortunately for him, he doesn't go when many expect him to go, but hopefully he'll get his opportunity.
They say he had a pretty good workout too. I mean, he worked out for teams. So I think this is probably a surprise for him and his, for his agent. And I'm hoping for the best for him. I'm hoping it's something where if another surgery is needed or a year of rest or whatever, that can work out. But he missed a whole year, and they still don't think he's ready physically. That's a huge red flag for teams, and that's why he's still there.
Yeah, major red flag. You're talking about an ACL injury at the max. You're talking about 9 months on the rehab for it to be like almost like a full year, and you're still not ready.
Yeah,
there is something.
More and more guys are coming back from that clean without issues. That's why it's a concern for me. But outside of McCoy, I think it's just a matter. One thing that stands out to me is how different this year as opposed to the last few years. My grades and where I expected guys to go rounds pretty much matched up pretty good with the league. It's way off this year. Like this year, some of my round projections are way off. And I think that speaks to, frankly, NIL keeping more and more players in. So the talent pool has shrunk, and now the grades are vastly different on a smaller group of what they consider. Yeah, the volatility is off the chart.
We said it would be very volatile this year. But one thing's not volatile is whenever I get LZ on the Move to 6 podcast, it's great. The next time we'll have a Move to 6 podcast will be on Monday. DJ should be able to come back and join us, and we'll have a chat about all the things that took place on the 2026 draft. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks. This is LZ. We will see you on the next Move to 6.